At one point, Iran, with strong support from Beijing, prominently showcased its so-called air defense Iron Curtains missiles capabilities and drone swarms. However, by June 2025, in the face of a joint US-Israel strike, the military system built with over a decade of investment and hundreds of billions in military aid has crumbled. Air defense systems were crippled, command networks were severed, and fewer than 100 missile launchers remained operational. The question arises, in the military ruin, which has been precision targeted by the US and Israel, how much of it was designed, deeply involved, or even led by the Chinese Communist Party, CCP? The answer is unsettling. The radar systems are Chinese-made, the command networks are Chinese-made, the drone platforms originate from China, and even the missile propellant materials, Beidou navigation support, and engineer training all bear the Made in China label. Many of the drones deployed by Iran are based on the Chinese Rainbow 4 unmanned aerial vehicle UAV. The Rainbow 4, touted as a replacement for the US Predator, was China's most successful exportable attack resonance platform, featuring a cruising speed of 300 kilometers per hour, 40 hours of endurance, and the ability to carry precision munitions. However, due to the ongoing sanctions on Iran, China did not sell the complete drones, but provided assembly kits under the guise of technical operation. Since 2017, Iran, with assistance from Chinese companies, has domestically produced variants like the Shahed 129 and Shahed 191, advertising them as capable of mass tactical strikes. The question remains, what exactly did China provide? Airframe blueprints. The version provided were civilian-grade composite materials lacking military-grade protective standards. Fire control systems. Critical algorithms were encrypted and sensitive modules demilitarized. Flight control chips. Supplied by Chinese military to civilian enterprises, Iran could only purchase them, not modify them. Power and energy modules, sourced from Chengdu Aircraft Industrial Group Corporation, Shenzhen Caspro Technology Co., and Shenzhen's model supply chain, they were prone to early wear and insufficient power. After receiving these assembly kits, Iran began producing the so-called Shahed series, which appeared adequate externally but were essentially poorly made replicas. When deployed on the battlefield, the issues became immediately apparent: 3 key failures. Number 1, anti-jamming capabilities were virtually non-existent. Israel imposed heavy electromagnetic suppression in the Persian Gulf before the conflict, causing many Iranian drones to lose communication. Some flew aimlessly, others forced to land, and some became target practice for Israeli forces. This failure was due to the low-end, civilian-grade flight control systems and data link modules provided by China, lacking essential military features like frequency hopping and adaptive frequency bands. System mismatches and coordination failures. What Iran called localization was essentially batch assembly. China provided a range of mismatched technology from different periods and specifications. The drones Iran produced had varied control systems and communication protocols, causing operational chaos when a single command was given. Some drones failed to launch, others lost flight control mid-flight. Number 3, no swarm capability. China provided only individual drone assembly kits, not a complete C4ISR. Command, control, communications, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance system. While Iran made many drones, they were incapable of coordinated actions, much like a group of robots operating independently. The result was that the much-publicized 1,000-drone fleet was ineffective and failed to pose any strategic threat. In terms of outcomes, Western intelligence reports after the conflict revealed that Iran launched over 400 drones, but more than 80% failed to reach their target airspace and were intercepted or crashed near Israel's borders. Some drones were deliberately allowed to pass, allowing Israeli forces to track their data links and target Iranian command centers. These drones, touted as a reconnaissance strike integrated platform, were in reality little more than airborne decoys. Iran believed it had obtained a powerful weapon, but in reality it had become an experimental subject in Beijing's military trade market. Even the core components of Iran's domestic drone systems were not locally produced, nor directly provided by China, but were illicitly smuggled from the US through Chinese underground networks. In March 2025, the US State Department announced a bounty for 4 Chinese nationals involved in systematically smuggling American dual-use technologies to Iran since 2007. The key equipment they smuggled includes crystal accelerators used for synchronizing flight control and navigation, missile inertial guidance modules for controlling ballistic flight accuracy, high-voltage converters that power flight control and guidance devices, interface chips for communication between drones and ground stations, even encrypted patches for ballistic calculation software. These American-made technologies flowed into Iran through the CCP smuggling network and were later embedded into the Shahed series drones and missiles. Thus, Iran's so-called domestic drone strike system is essentially a military illusion experiment jointly sold by CCP military civil integration enterprises and smuggling groups. Since 2016, Northwestern Polytechnical University has been training Iranian engineers, offering courses on drone structure designs, composite material application, and flight control systems. However, the key algorithms and core parameters are retained and only structural diagrams were provided. This had led to multiple failed test flights of Iran's later drones, due to insufficient thrust, drifting fire control, and navigation failures. This is not just a technical issue, but a technical ceiling set by the CCP. They provided the parts that look like tools, but they are always missing the key chips and the brain. As for Iran's ballistic missile systems, the CCP's role has never been in directly selling missiles, but in more secretive and lethal weapons, accessories, raw materials, and navigation systems. Since the end of 2024, at least 2 Iranian cargo ships, Golban and Jairan, have shipped more than 1,000 tons of sodium perchlorate from China. This chemical is packaged as a civilian chemical raw material, but once converted to ammonium perchlorate, it becomes a core component for making solid rocket propellant. These exports are not from ordinary companies, but from typical military civil integration enterprises like China National Chemical Group and Shenzhen Caspro Technology Co. Thus, Beijing didn't sell missiles to Iran, but it sold them the heart pump that makes missiles fly. In 2023, the CCP approved the opening of civilian high-precision Beidou signals to Iran, with ground reception stations set up by Iran by China Aerospace Technology Corporation. Although marketed as a commercial service, its functions include centimeter-level positioning, short-message communication, target tracking, and tactical network synchronization, all for military purposes. The problem is this entire chain is not under Iran's control but is remotely managed by the CCP. Beijing only opens partial frequency bands, and signals update must go through Beijing's gateway. Some target coordinates can even be remotely interfered with or delayed. The key components used in these missiles, such as inertial guidance modules, ballistic calculation chips, and crystal accelerators, were mostly American-made. Iran did not develop them independently. Instead, they were obtained through the underground military trade smuggling chain led by the CCP. When the war broke out, Iran launched over 550 ballistic missiles towards Israel. Although it seemed like a massive show of force, the outcome was embarrassing. Over 90% were intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome and Arrow 3. The majority of the remaining ones deviated from their targets and fell into deserts and empty land. The effective hit rate was less than 10%. The core reasons lie in 3 words: patchwork, flaw, control. Poor navigation accuracy. Beidou civilian signals, combined with Iranian local processing, causing huge errors. Poor fuel quality. The CCP provided raw materials, but Iran's homemade mixing led to ballistic drift and unstable range. Mixed parts. The CCP smuggled disassembled civilian parts to assemble missiles, relying purely on luck. Controllable systems. The CCP controls a critical technology pipeline and has never truly allowed Iran to independently guide the missiles. In summary, Iran's missiles aren't inaccurate, but from the very beginning, the CCP never intended for them to be accurate. Beijing didn't sell them hope, but strategic dependency, creating a technological chain. More worryingly, this fuel navigation parts system has not stopped due to the war. Recent shipping records show that in early June 2025, Iran again ordered a batch of sodium perchlorate raw materials through Hong Kong. The shipment is still stalled at the port, waiting for the next window period. This shows that even though Iran's military system has been severely damaged by airstrikes, Beijing is still behind the scenes. As early as 2017, Iran introduced the JY-10 battlefield command and control platform developed by China Electronics Technology Group. Theoretically, it can integrate various air defense forces, S-300, Bavar 373, Khordad series, target detection, air situation analysis, and mission assignment. Iran even renamed it Nega, meaning all eyes view, promoting its highly integrated and all-domain defense capabilities. However, during the Operation Midnight Hammer launched by the US and Israel on June 22, 2025, this system nearly completely failed. Over half of the 120 radar points were destroyed or paralyzed within 48 hours. JY-10 failed to mobilize air defense resources, lacked coordinated response, and simply disappeared from the battlefield. The core failure reasons include: Number 1, extremely poor capability. Iran's air defense is a patchwork system. Russian, North Korean, and Chinese components with protocols, languages, and data links not compatible. The JY-10 couldn't integrate them and turned into a display system. Number 2, lack of real-time data links. Nagar was not connected to the Chinese Beidou military network, and Iran's self-built communication network was incomplete. During wartime, they lost the air situation map, and the command system could only give seizure-style orders. Number 3, lack of interceptor missiles, stockpiles, and radar failure. The S-300, Bavar 373, and Kodad 15 systems all depend on missile interception. But in reality, the interceptors were extremely expensive and Iran couldn't afford them. The Russian systems and Chinese-made radar links were incompatible, and even though the radar saw the targets, the missiles couldn't hit them. Israel used electronic suppression, making the radar blind, and many missiles were launched without targets. In the end, the CCP's participation in the Iron Curtain system collapsed under the triple attack of stealth bombers, electronic warfare, and precision strikes. No defense could even protect the presidential palace. Beijing not only sold the equipment but also miraculously wove a military trade financial cycle model. This includes high-priced lures plus installment loans. Buy 8 to 12 radar systems to fully protect, but what if Iran couldn't afford them? No problem. China handles the loan. Can't repay the loan? Interest accumulates. If not, continue buying oil and exchange it for CCP's equipment. Thus, Iran has been buying equipment, taking loans, selling oil for equipment, and getting fleeced twice. Only after the war, when ammunition exhausted and the defenses collapse, do they realize it's not that Chinese equipment is useless, it's that they didn't buy enough. But the loan remains, and they must keep buying, unable to repay, so they are bound forever in a vicious cycle. In fact, the vast majority of Iranians do not trust Chinese weapons. As early as the 1980s, the CCP sold a batch of J-7 fighter jets to Iran, which had poor performance and a high failure rate, leaving a long-lasting shadow of the unreliability of Chinese military products. Within Iran's military, the impression that Chinese products are inferior to Russian ones is deeply rooted. This has made it difficult for Beijing to sell a complete set of equipment to Iran ever since. For the CCP, it never wanted to risk large-scale arms sales. Iran has been under sanctions for a long time, making it a highly sensitive client. If the CCP openly sold full military equipment, it would be like walking into a sanctions trap. Thus, we see that China's military aid to Iran is never in complete sets. Radar systems are separate, command systems are separate, drone technology is given, and missiles are only supplied with raw materials, resulting in incomplete combat capabilities. Why is this the case? On one hand, it is out of concern for the United States. On the other, it is due to distrust of Iran. Iranians have a high sense of pride, often refusing to take orders from China on the battlefield and generally dismissing Chinese technology. If the CCP sold too much, it could backfire. But if it sold less, it could maintain leverage. Therefore, Beijing prefers to sell half sets and let Iran assemble the parts themselves, knowing that if it fails, the blame cannot be placed on Beijing. Not to mention, the CCP has also sold a lot of high-end equipment to Saudi Arabia in the past, which has long angered Iran. After this crushing defeat, the confidence of Iran's military and Chinese-made air defense system has completely collapsed. Whether they will continue purchasing in the future is now uncertain. To be frank, the CCP now has no confidence in openly supporting Iran. It's not because it values ethics, but because it cannot afford to lose. Beijing is now highly reliant on Western markets, with over 50% of China's industrial output dependent on exports to complete this product cycle. Behind this lies a massive employment structure, with thousands of factories and supply chains relying on foreign trade for survival. In light of this reality, would Beijing risk offending the entire Western world for Iran? Would it dare abandon the European Union market? Would it dare to sacrifice its own industrial system? The answer is, of course, no. So, Iran is not a friend of the CCP. It is a military trade client, and more importantly, a testing ground for its military industrial profit model.